Hello and welcome to our webinar, Transforming Your Marketing for an All-Digital World. My name is Erin Hannaford. I'm joined by Kevin Miller, one of ClickDimensions solution engineers. He will be speaking and presenting a little later on in our session. Today we're going to talk about how marketers need to adapt to an all-digital world and some tips and tricks to go about helping with that transformation. We'll start with a brief review of how 2020 changed everything, how social distancing meant digital everything, and then dive into how you can be successful in this new all digital world that we're in, focusing on some key tips and tactics. And then Kevin will jump in and actually show within the ClickDimensions product and demo some of the features and points that we're discussing today. We will leave time for questions at the end. But before we dive into our content, I want to cover a couple quick housekeeping items. While we'll have Q&A at the end, the chat functionality and questions functionality are open throughout the webinar, so please feel free to type your questions in as you have them, and we will get to as many as we can at the end of the content presentation. This webinar is being recorded and it will be shared out. In that follow-up communication, you'll also be receiving a link to the ClickDimensions 2021 Idea ebook. Some of you may be familiar with this annual content piece, but in January of every year, we release an Idea ebook that focuses on marketing tips and insights to help marketers enhance their overall marketing strategy and programs. This year's ebook, we felt was timely to focus on transforming marketing to adapt to this digital world. A lot of the content from today's webinar is from this ebook, so we hope that you'll enjoy the ebook that you receive afterwards, and it will certainly expand on some of what we're discussing today. So with that, let's get started. I think we can all agree that 2020 was a year that changed everything. From lockdowns to remote work, social distancing, Zoom fatigue, 2020 looked different than any other year in recent history. But what does that mean for 2021? Well, there's certainly no shortage of memes expressing that 2021 is just a continuation of what we were experiencing in 2020. Certainly, we're seeing that different parts of the world are having various experiences in this new year, and some people think that some of the recent scientific advances are going to bring a return to normal. And while we may be inching towards a return to what resembles normal, businesses are going to need to adjust to a new normal. Digital everything is not going away. In fact, the way that people buy has fundamentally changed. Because of that, this digital transformation, it wasn't just accelerated, it was practically mandated last year. With buyer behavior changing, sales, the way that we sell has changed. We're seeing that there's an increased focus on not just aligning sales and marketing, but integrating and unifying those two teams, insisting that they are in lockstep with one another, which means that a change in sales approach comes with a shift in marketing's approach as well. This past fall, Gartner released 2 reports, both of which I thought had some fairly interesting insights on the shifting buying and selling behavior. First, in Gartner's Consumer Values and Lifestyle Survey that was conducted in October, they found that 43% of consumers say that they're planning to continue their current way of doing things online post-pandemic. Even more telling, I thought, was from their September report, The Future of Sales 2025, Why Sales Needs a Digital First Approach, where they're predicting that in less than 5 years, 80% of B2B sales interactions will occur in digital channels. With that validation, it's imperative that marketers adjust to an all digital world. So how can marketers be successful in an all digital world? Today, we're going to focus on 3 key areas and elements: creating a digital strategy, utilizing data, and thinking beyond email. When we think about a marketer's priorities, ClickDimensions recently surveyed our customers. In fact, it was in December of last year that we surveyed all of our customers in our first ever ClickDimensions benchmarking survey. In that survey, we asked about their marketing practices, the tactics they used, and what their priorities are. The results that you're seeing here on the screen show what our customers identified as priorities over the next 18 months. And it's certainly a diverse response set. You see that there are, a number of priorities that are clearly going to take marketers' times. But what it does show is that there is a shift to digital happening. So starting with our 3 areas of focus, let's first talk about creating a digital strategy. It may seem obvious to have a defined strategy, but with the seemingly overnight shift that took place last year to a reliance on digital marketing, it created more of a reactive approach than a proactive approach as marketers and businesses were adjusting to how to adapt their strategies, how to adapt their tactics, how to adapt their sales techniques. So to change from being reactive to proactive, we need to have a strategy. A couple important considerations when you're creating a strategy. First, we need to make sure that we have clear goals defined. And when we say clear goals, we're talking about ensuring that the goals also have specific measurements to them, that you can go back and say that you're able to measure the success of something. So a goal might be to generate leads and revenue, but a specific goal is going to be to increase leads by a certain percentage, to increase revenue by a certain percentage. Next, we want to make sure that we're looking back at our past marketing efforts. What was successful? What wasn't successful? Look at those successful things through performance metrics and not just the anecdotal feedback of that campaign worked well. When you look at that, then you're going to incorporate what worked into your go forward plan. Finally, it's important to be realistic about your means. Understand what it is that you have in the budget and what you can do with that budget. But also understand that means is more than just budget. Do you have the right resources? Do you have enough resources? Do those resources have the right skill set to accomplish the plan that you're putting together? Do you have the right tools to execute against the plan? And then set reasonable expectations on deliverables. Don't try to do too much too soon. Our next element of focus revolves around data. Referencing back to that ClickDimensions benchmarking survey, we asked about the importance of analytics for our customers, and we found that 84% of them said that marketing analytics is important to their overall marketing strategy. To expand on that, in a recent Forrester report, they've identified that 74% of businesses say that they want to be data-driven, but fewer than 30% of those businesses said that they're actually good at connecting analytics to action. A successful digital approach relies on data. You can be personalized if you're using your data for more than just analytics. Look at the data that you have and make sure that the data that you've captured on your audience is used in your campaigns to create a personalized experience. As consumers, we're used to an incredibly personalized experience in our personal buying lives, in our consumer lives. But more and more, we're starting to expect that that happens on the B2B side as well. Data can help power that. The most obvious use of data is analytics. Study the trends and make decisions based on what your data tells you. What are you learning from your data? What has worked? What hasn't worked? One of the most important considerations around data, though, is that to make it actionable, it has to be clean. So you need to ensure that data cleanliness is a priority within your organization. Moving to our last key element, and what I think is one of the most important elements, is that recognizing that digital is more than just email. In our benchmarking survey, we asked what percentage of a customer's marketing campaigns include more than just email as a marketing channel. And we saw that almost 50% of our respondents said that over half of their marketing campaigns include channels outside of just email. And those ranged from social to ad placements to webinars and so on. And that's certainly promising to see, but an all digital world is going to require more than 50%. So let's talk about ways to go beyond just email. When we're looking at incorporating a multi-channel approach, that's going to make it more likely for us to be where our prospects are, to meet them where they are. It's also going to increase the likelihood that our audience is paying attention to what we're saying, and they're not just relegating our communications and our efforts to the noise that they're hearing. So we're going to talk about a couple specific ways to incorporate multi-channel approaches to a digital campaign. We're going to talk about automating campaigns, forms and surveys, event management, and social marketing. And we'll dive into each of these a little bit, and then we'll bring everything together into a campaign. So first, let's start with automated campaigns. You might more commonly hear these referenced as nurture campaigns, drip campaigns. The ClickDimensions product itself refers to them as campaign automations. Essentially, whatever you call it, these automated campaigns allow you to communicate with your audience based on activities they've taken, based on data elements you've captured about them, and it allows you to be more personalized. You are in effect imitating a one-on-one communication, but at scale. And I know we're talking about going beyond email, so I certainly want to address that automated campaigns are indeed email-based, but they can incorporate other marketing channels. And you'll see that in some examples that we tie together here at the end. But it's not uncommon to have an action for a salesperson to make a phone call as part of an automated campaign, to send an SMS message as part of an automated campaign, to integrate webinars into your campaign cadence, and so on. When we move to looking at landing pages, forms, and surveys, landing pages are essentially an extension of your website, but unlike everyone's website, a landing page allows for a clear call to action. You don't have the distraction of your website header that has multiple navigation options where you can move from place to place. A landing page is typically going to have one goal associated to it. Forms and surveys are oftentimes embedded in those landing pages. Forms allow us to capture leads that are coming into our system. Surveys are an excellent way to capture other data points about new contacts or existing contacts. And then again, build on that data as we advance our campaigns. I think everyone would agree that there's been an evolution around events. More so than any other marketing tactic, events have transformed and morphed into a completely digital experience with the cancellation of trade shows, with business travel not happening. You're not going to be visiting someone's booth to hear about their company. You're not going to be networking over cocktails in an expo hall right now. And we don't know when that's going to return. But what we do know is that online events are still giving companies the ability to connect with customers and prospects in meaningful ways. And finally, let's talk about the role of social in all of this. There has been a surge in the reliance of social as a communication channel. eMarketer has a stat that a third of the world uses social media regularly. Pre-pandemic, social media didn't have quite the surgence of businesses relying on it as a communication channel. It was something that was added to the marketing mix. Now it is absolutely critical to be integrated into your marketing mix. And it allows you to enhance your brand recognition, to build a following, to connect with your audience in a different way. And while marketers can inform their audience via social, it's also especially compelling to marketers to be able to listen to their audience and to utilize social media to hear the dialogue and hear what their prospects care about, what industry experts are talking about, and ensure that they are staying relevant by talking about topics that matter to the people that matter to them. So now let's bring this all together and talk about what a digital campaign could look like. So let's say someone sees an ad that you've placed on Google, on a different site that you buy ads on. They find your ad online. They click on that ad and they submit a form that is embedded on one of your landing pages. That action adds them to your database as a lead or a contact, however you have your CRM preferences set up. Once they're added to your database, then you can put them into an automated nurture campaign. That campaign certainly includes emails, but you can also have triggers based on if they interact with a social post. They can follow a different path in a campaign, or if they visit a page on your website, they might be prompted with something different in a campaign. Their activity in that automated campaign could at a point indicate that it's time for them to engage with one of your sales reps and begin progressing through your pipeline. Or it could tell you that they need to be put into a different campaign upon completion of the first. Let's say that different campaign is focused on a webinar. The emails are going to include invites to webinars, reminders to people that haven't yet registered for it, reminders and calendar links to people that have registered for it, follow-up communications after the webinar, sharing the recording like I said we're going to do today. Perhaps you might even include a survey asking for feedback on the webinar. Maybe then after that effort, they're ready to engage with your sales rep and hopefully progress to a new sale. At the end of the campaign, it's important to remember to analyze the data and the metrics to assess how successful you were or weren't, assess what worked, what can be improved on, and then move on to the next campaign, taking those actionable insights and applying what worked and tweaking what didn't. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin to show you how ClickDimensions has some features that support multi-channel digital campaigns. So Kevin, I am going to make you the presenter here, and you will be able to share and dive into the ClickDimensions product and walk through how some of the functionality that empowers multi-channel digital marketing actually works.
Okay, great. And thanks, Erin. And hi, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us talk. And hopefully we will give these guys some ideas and things to hopefully give you information to think about. And really the first area I would like to start with are forms and or surveys. And both forms and surveys have similar components. They're both rendered as HTML components as one of the ways that you can capture information. And both forms and surveys, of course, can be embedded into landing pages. They can be embedded into your websites, or they could be standalone forms or surveys. Each is going to have their own actions, which we'll cover in a minute. And with forms specifically, you're going to have the ability, of course, to have multiple forms. You're going to have the ability to associate forms with Dynamics 365 campaigns. And one of the really nice features with forms is that you're going to have the ability to map specific fields to a form element. So if we look at a specific form here on the screen, you're going to see, and then if we look at the specific form fields, so each form is made up of specific fields, and all of these fields, any form that is surfaced, you're going to be able to map that field up based on what type of field it is. Is it a text field? Is it a radio field? Whatever type of field you have within your Dynamics 365 environment, you're going to have the ability to map those fields from the form into Dynamics 365. And you'll notice here, as we go to a form field, you'll actually have the ability both at a contact or lead level to map to specific fields within Dynamics 365, which I think is a really nice feature if you have, again, a contact us form or any sort of customer prospect facing way to gather this information. You're going to be able to get the information that is input by this submitter directly into Dynamics 365 at both a contact or lead level or both. And so, forms are very powerful in terms of capturing information. You're able to map this information into specific fields within Dynamics 365. You have various ways to embed the forms, to surface the forms on your website. Again, if it's a contact us form, maybe an ebook download, you're capturing information even along your marketing process. You may have, various forms to capture information depending on the stage that maybe your lead is progressing through. Maybe it's a multi-step process. You have that ability, all of that information that is captured can be put back into your Dynamics 365 instance. It's all going to be linked to that contact or lead, of course. And then, with that said, I think a really nice feature too is surveys. Not only is it a nice feature here, but ClickDimensions has just recently launched our new survey editor. And so looking at the actual survey editor, it's a straight form, again, where you have your surveys listed here. You can have multiple surveys that all originates in Dynamics 365, but I click over to an actual survey editor, you're going to have a lot of options and a really powerful builder to really cater, even if it's like a post-event follow-up or, some sort of NPS score. I know that's a really popular type of survey that users will want to interact with to get your end customers or who you're marketing to information about it. And you're going to have all these different features here. You've got this toolbox to the left. You can see all the various question types that you're able to create. And you're not only able to create all different types of questions, but you're able to apply logic to the survey so that if certain questions are answered, maybe the subsequent question or the following question is different. You're going to have that ability to have all different customized navigational approaches. Again, when the survey is submitted, that information is going to come back into Dynamics 365. And as a nice view here, I would like to just show some of the various different types of surveys and web forms that we have surfaced on some of our sales marketing information. Everything from a customer satisfaction survey, it could be you'll notice this one has 10 questions. They're broken up into bite-sized content. So as a user, if I answer the first question, I'm automatically taken to the second question, keeps going through here. You can even have options here of having check boxes, going to next. You can have your survey set up as basically steps within the process. Another nice survey here is the NPS with logic. So really based on what setting or what number I select here, my next step is going to be a totally different set of questions. So you'll notice here, if I select 7, I'm going to get a set of questions around, what are your favorite items here? But maybe I select a 3. I'm not really happy. You'll notice here that my next question is, how can we better improve our services? Another nice example here, I think, is, we can give overall feedback. We can have our questions broken up into matrix where you have to rate your various components this way or other. For each line item, of course, using radio buttons, you're only able to select one. So users are able to stack and rank these options up into different formats here, multiple questions here. All of this data would be submitted back, linked to a known contact or lead back into your Dynamics 365. So you're going to have all of this information at your disposal, into Dynamics 365. Another nice survey example here is what I like to call the survey toolbox. And this is a good visualization of all the different question types that you can build within a survey. You can have check boxes, of course, radio boxes, you can have drop downs, you can have image pickers. So if you had a series of images that a responder were to select, you're able to upload your specific images here. You don't have to use animal images, they're quite nice, but you're able to select images here. You've got all these various types here. You even have, which I think is a nice feature, if someone were to give a signature to something, you have the ability to capture that as a field. You of course have the recapture here. All that information is gone into that. And if we look back at the survey editor one more time, you'll notice that we also have various actions. And I think this is a great example of how your surveys can integrate into workflows. So if we look at the actions here, you can do a campaign response. That's a Dynamics 365 campaign or a follow-up, or you can add the user to a specific marketing list or remove them from a marketing list. You can have a team notification. So really, what I want to show and stress here is, outside of complex automation projects, even just at a survey level, you're able to go in and really start to build a process here. You could, remove them from a marketing list, add them to a marketing list. You can totally drag around. All of these elements are interacting directly with your Dynamics 365 instance. So these are marketing lists that exist within Dynamics 365. So even outside of campaign automation, which I'll kind of demo some bits about campaign automation in a minute, but even directly within both the survey editor as well as the form editor, you're able to create a series of actions. You don't have to involve a CRM admin or developer to build these complicated workflows or even simple workflows. As a marketer, you're able to go in for this specific form, for this specific survey, and you're able to build some, actions and a series of actions that directly integrate with your Dynamics 365 instance. And so with that said, I will click over and talk just a little bit about events. And of course, ClickDimensions has integrations into 5 different third-party event connectors. And so any events that are created within these connectors, participations related to these connectors, all that information is going to flow directly into Dynamics 365 via the ClickDimensions connector components. and really easy to set up here. Each connector has its own information that it captures. Really big, and a new feature that was added in the product in 2020 as a result, of course, with the pandemic and everybody starting to use Zoom. I think Zoom even became a verb, and people are zooming and talking about hopping on a Zoom and all of that. We have a direct connector into the Zoom webinar, so that similar to what this is here. You'll notice I click here just to set this information up. This is all the information that you would need to put in to actually configure a specific connector. And then once configured, our system and ClickDimensions is going to go and it's going to query your Zoom instance, however you connected it here, and start to pull in any event. So you're able to actually create these events within the specific connector platform, send out invitations that way, manage participants that way, but all that information is actually going to flow back into Dynamics 365. And so if we click over here and go to the messaging component, actually I clicked on the wrong one, web and events, pardon me there, but you're going to see that you've got your events here. All these events are coming from the various connectors that are going to show here. As soon as it loads here, you're going to see that we have all these different events. You're coming from different sources. So maybe you use GoToWebinar for specific events. Maybe Zoom is used for specific events. You're able to have multiple ones of these set up. You're even able to assign them to a Dynamics campaign. Again, all this information is coming from the various connectors. You've got invitations, how many registrations, you even have the participants of specific connectors and specific events listed here as well, which I think is going to give you notice here that each of these event participations are going to be tied to a specific lead or a contact here. You've got all this information, again, where the source, where it came from, all that information all directly with just a simple connect. Basically, configuring your connector on this screen here. Once it's configured, we're going to start pulling in this data. So you're able to manage this data, and we're going to get this information linked to a lead or a contact directly within your Dynamics 365 instance. And then another area that I think is really nice to show is and talk about is actual social integration. So if we click over here now, you're going to see that all of your social posts can not only originate from Dynamics 365, but you're going to keep track by the fact that it originates in Dynamics 365. You're going to have records for each social post that you're able to generate on your various social channels. And not only the posts are going to be within your Dynamics 365 instance, but then if we click over and look at social clicks here, we're going to see that any interactions that happen via your posts, any clicks onto it, we're going to capture this information. We're going to capture if it was contact, if it's a known contact or a known lead, if it was anonymous visitor, what IP network they came from, what the actual social post, what the link they clicked on. We're going to tell you, the social profile and the social network here. Again, you're able to tie it to a Dynamics 365 campaign. So you're going to get a really nice view of your various social integrations and social interactions. And with that, I will also talk a little bit about campaign automation, which I think is a really powerful tool and a nice way to really bring all of these various interactions, not only with email, but through your social channels, through your forum posts, and through your survey posts. You're able to build some really complex and really detailed integrations and pathways around how your marketing initiatives trigger and what pathway they follow. So if we click over to here, this is a nice example of a campaign automation. Hopefully this is familiar to a lot of you all, but it's nice, I think, to bring out just some of the various components here. You have all these various triggers. So if a user submits a form, you're able to begin them down a campaign automation or a nurture path. If they've submitted a subscription, a ClickDimensions subscription, if they've submitted a ClickDimensions survey, if they've interacted with a ClickDimensions email, even if they've been added to a Dynamics 365 list, or if they've been removed from a list, that could start a campaign automation, or if a field is even updated within Dynamics 365. So maybe there's a field on your contact form that a actual Dynamics 365 user goes in and makes a change to that field, and you want that change to actually fire off or trigger a specific campaign automation. You have that ability. Again, registered for an event, attended an event, all of these are various triggers, even if a page is visited. So if you had, a page on your website, you want to say, well, if a user clicks on this page, this is this page, I want to start them down a nurture path. Again, around social clicks, if they clicked on a social post click, again, I want them to follow a specific path, even a manual ad. So you could have a user within Dynamics 365 that, say, takes a lead record and says, hey, I want to, begin putting them, or I want to start them down this specific campaign automation. Your users are going to have this ability. And then outside of triggers, you then have all these various actions, which I think are really nice. Not only can you send a ClickDimensions email, you could then add as an action a specific lead that is following a specific positive path. Maybe they're going down a negative path. Maybe you could add them to a marketing list. You could also remove them from a marketing list, which I think is a powerful tool. We utilize marketing lists not only as lists to send emails out to users, but we also use them as what I like to call a bucket. We're putting this information in, we're putting this user into a specific category, right, for sake of a better term, or a bucket of information, or maybe we want to remove them from this specific bucket. It's just really a nice way to group contacts and leads into a marketing list for purposes outside of just what you would consider like traditionally sending them an email. Other actions here, you could actually update a field. So you can have a positive path, a series of paths that update fields within Dynamics 365. So, that's another good example of a way that your campaign automation and your users of the campaign automation, so the people that are going in and building these campaign automations, they can interact with Dynamics 365 directly without involving a CRM admin or a CRM developer, Dynamics 365 developer. You can actually touch the individual fields directly from your campaign automation. You can assign owners, notify users, create a task activity. Maybe you want to put the specific pathway, maybe you want to assign a task for that specific contact or lead, maybe schedule a follow-up phone call. You can even initiate Dynamics 365 workflows. So say if there is a complex opportunity to lead to contact process that you have that operates kind of behind the scenes as a workflow within Dynamics 365, you can actually have your campaign automation touch and interact with that workflow just directly from the campaign automation editor. You can also notify teams. You can have a campaign response. You can even send a ClickDimensions SMS, directly from the platform. So I think this is a good way to really begin to build this marketing journey. It's going to give you interactions. It's going to give you triggers, actions, not only around ClickDimensions components, but really, core Dynamics 365 functionality and abilities. It's going to give your users a really nice, easy drag and drop interface to, interact and to work with your various leads into a contact, regardless of the lead stage, even at the top of the funnel. Maybe, if you look at the overall journey, you have a contact us form that creates a lead. Maybe they're at the beginning stage here. Maybe that puts them, when they submit the form, into a campaign automation, which then maybe notifies users, put those participants on a specific marketing list. Maybe you create follow-ups. Maybe then you interact with the Dynamics 365 workflow. So there's so many different ways that you can really interact with your leads and your contacts as they're coming in with all these various triggers and actions. And one last thing I would like to show really quick is something that I think ties a lot of this together. And you'll notice here, this is a lead. It's the beginning of the sales funnel. They're still in the lead opportunity here. But with the various ways that the ClickDimensions product touches all the various marketing automation, your marketing components, you're going to be able to see, this lead, again, newly created, we're going to be able to see in one view. I mean, this is a simple form that I created within Dynamics 365. It's a group of subgrids with all of the related components that the ClickDimensions marketing automation platform can touch a contact or lead, can interact with a contact or lead. So you have marketing lists, sent emails here. You can see all the emails that were sent to a specific lead or contact, any events that happened within the email. If they were clicked, if they bounced, if they clicked on a specific link, you're going to be able to see exactly how they were touched, if they unsubscribed to any list, any page visits that they visit on your website. In one view, you're going to be able to see all this information, the visits to your website and specific page views. What pages did they actually view within your website? This lead, again, newly created. I mean, if you think about the power here, you could have, a BDR, someone that is basically, interacting with this lead for the first time. Maybe they're going to make a phone call to the lead. You've already captured that information via ClickDimensions form. That person is going to be, or that Dynamics 365 user is going to be able to see, what pages this lead viewed, what forms they submitted, even not only what forms they submitted, but what fields, what was the actual fields that were submitted from the specific form. You can do the same thing with surveys. You can see exactly what surveys they completed, what social clicks, what survey answers were given by that specific lead that was just generated via, however you contacted them. Maybe if you had a text message component of your campaign automation and you're sending them an automated text message, you're going to be able to see all of this information. It's kind of a, really a 365 or no, 360, excuse me, degree view of this lead, regardless of their lead stage. Even if they convert to a contact, you're going to be able to have history of all the different ways that you have touched your lead or your contact outside of just emails. Of course, emails is part of this, but you're going to have all this information at your fingertips, all directly within Dynamics 365. You can integrate this with custom workflows, or even if you want to pull this information into a Power App, or if you had a Power Automate or something like that, and you wanted to work with this data, it's going to live in your Dynamics 365 environment as part of your ClickDimensions product. And Aaron, I know I have said a lot. Hopefully I've left some time for any questions or anything to cover, but if I don't talk to you all again, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure.
You certainly did, Kevin. So thank you very much for that in-depth overview. We definitely have some questions that have come in. Looking at them, I can actually take the first couple. So we have a couple people that joined a little bit late and are asking about the recording. So I'm happy to reiterate, yes, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared via follow-up communication with all of you. Our next question is around digital marketing efforts, specifically digital campaigns, and how do you know when you're doing too much? And they indicated that they feel like they're overloading their clients and that they're seeing unsubscribes at the highest level that they have. So, first, this is a great question, and I'm happy to share, my thoughts and opinions on it. I think if you are asking if you're doing too much, then you probably have to take a step back and really look at something. It might not be that you are doing too much. It might be that you are sending to the wrong people or what you're sending isn't relevant to them. Well, unsubscribes are, certainly a great metric to look at and important to look at when you're growing a database. Personally, I am more interested in looking at engagement metrics. If I think about my own behaviors, I get hundreds of emails a day, and I'm not always going and clicking the unsubscribe on the things that aren't relevant to me or don't interest me. I'm simply deleting them and ignoring them. I might have ordered something online from a company 5 years ago and still get their emails, but I've never purchased from them again. So I think as a marketer, we have the opportunity to really look at that engagement data and, again, going back to utilizing the data that you have to ensure that you are being relevant. Um, you know, Everyone is getting inundated with emails. They're getting inundated with invites to webinars. Their social feeds are full. So the more relevant and targeted you can be, looking at your audience and not treating everybody the same. I think that is going to drive to more success. And enable you to better adjust your communication cadence and your communications, mix and channels to be appropriate to a more specific audience. So I love that question, and I hope that helped. And I'm always happy to discuss stuff like that. Our next question, Kevin, I can also answer, is asking if we have a GoToWebinar connector. And yes, we do have a GoToWebinar connector. We are actually using it today. So all of you are currently logged into a GoToWebinar webinar that we're hosting. ClickDimensions has a GoToWebinar account for any marketing webinars that we put on, and we utilize our own connector for that. So now we're getting into some of the more technical stuff, Kevin, that I am going to punt over to you. So we have a couple
Awesome.
questions, focused on the social click data. And the most common two are asking, one, where do you find the social click data when you're in ClickDimensions? And then two,
Okay.
how do you associate social triggers to campaign automations? Can you show both of those things?
Sure. So your social information is going to be within the messaging, which I'm showing here, the messaging area of the ClickDimensions app. And so you have the ability, of course, to create a new social post. This is, of course, after your connectors are configured. So this would be utilizing the product. So you're able to, create a new post. You're able to see all of the posts that you have created. And then another option here is social clicks. And social clicks is an entity, a table. I forget Microsoft is calling it tables now, but it is a table within Dynamics 365. So even if you wanted to do, some advanced workflows or anything around there, this data around social clicks is a table within Dynamics 365, thus the view here. What was the second part about campaign automation? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I answer correctly. Is around social clicks, I believe, correct?
How you utilize social clicks as a trigger in campaign automations.
Okay, so if I select here, and so you tie this to a social post. So it's going to originate as a social post, and then you're going to select your network. I mean, basically, it's looking for an entry into here as a trigger. And I will look and see, Aaron, after this webinar, and can send out or post a link if there's specific information on our knowledge base that gets a little bit deeper. One of the nice features here is you can only have it trigger once per participant. So you could have it, every time a participant were to click on something, you could have that as a trigger, or you could say, well, just one time. Well, once they interact with it the first time, then they're on the automation and they aren't able to rejoin the automation.
Great. We have a number of people, Kevin, asking how you navigate to set up the connectors, whether it's Zoom or GoToWebinar. How do you find where to set up the connectors? Can you show what that navigation looks like?
Absolutely. It is within the settings and support within ClickDimensions. So we go here and there it goes. You have an option here, your connector configuration. It's under the ClickDimensions integration settings. This is a new area that we moved event connectors into with the foresight to the fact that we're going to have more and more event connectors. I've heard rumors that Teams is on the roadmap down the road, so there's going to be more and more event connectors as event connectors become important. But literally it's just clicking on this, and then let me bring back over. And so you're going to be able to see, these are all, and this is just one specific environment that we operate for sales related demos, but you've got all of your connectors that are already configured, what type of connectors. So you can see here that we have CVent, Eventbrite, GoToWebinar, and WebEx connectors. So you can have more than one, I guess. And certain connectors, you can have more than one instance. They vary by connector. You'll notice here that we have multiple Eventbrite. I think some of them are limited to just one. You have then, if we go to add a connector, and this is specific to events, again, you're going to get, the different third parties. So CVent, Eventbrite, GoToWebinar, WebEx, Zoom. As I select each one, each connector is going to have its own information that it needs to capture. Typically it's an API key, it's an API password, if there's different accounts set up. So each connector is going to have its own settings here in terms of, what you need to get the connector set up. And so if I cancel out of here, and then I can show an existing one, you also have the ability, of course, to edit any of the existing connectors, but you have the ability, if you'll notice, there's a default action. You're going to have the ability to say, this connector is concerned with leads, or I want participants to be created as a lead, or I want participants to be created as a contact, because we know that a lot of Dynamics 365 users utilize leads and contacts differently. And the goal of the platform was not to paint anyone in a corner and say, well, if you use a connector, you have to treat these as contacts or treat these as leads. We're giving you the option to, how do you want to treat your participants, and how do they get entered into Dynamics 365? So hopefully that answered the question.
I think it did, yes.
Awesome.
And Kevin, I'm hoping you have an answer to this question, because I'm not 100% certain, so we might have to follow up with the people that have asked. But I've got a handful of people asking if a solution file update is required to see the Zoom connector.
Oh, that's a good question. I think it is, because Zoom becomes, and the reason I think so is that Zoom is actually an option set. So if we look at, let me click back over to here, and we look at our web and, okay, yeah, for events. So if we look at all of our events here, we're going to see, where is it, the source. So Zoom becomes the source. I am pretty sure, and I will check the release notes to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that that requires a solution update too, because there's Zoom recognitions within Dynamics 365, which typically requires a solution update.
I thought so too. But for the people that are asking, I will take that as an action item to confirm that and have someone reach out to you. And then Kevin, we've got a couple people asking, what are the social networks that that work with ClickDimensions that you can actually see clicks and leads from?
Okay, that is a good question as well, and I think a good review of that, also a review for me as soon as it loads, is if we go into our ClickDimensions settings, there is a social marketing settings here. So if we click here, let me drag this over to my monitor so you guys can see. You are going to be able to, it's not showing up here, but it's going to be Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm not 100% sure if YouTube is part of the embedded one. I can get more information, Aaron, and I can send that to you to distribute out as well on the specific channels.
Okay, that would be great. We are coming to the end of our hour. So there are a couple questions that are very specific to individual customers' instances. If you have asked one of those questions, I will have your ClickDimensions representative reach out to you. Again, I will confirm that we are indeed sending out the recording and some follow-up information on behalf of Kevin, myself, and everyone else at ClickDimensions. I thank you for taking the time to join us today and look forward to continuing to discuss digital marketing with you in webinars down the road. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.